Did you get your strawberry? Now I'm on.
Strawberry shortcake. I'm gluten free, so I'm not gonna. But thank you, I appreciate
Good morning, everyone. Testing 1, 2. Yes, there I am. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Please take a seat if you would. I hope you got strawberry shortcake. Thank you for everyone in the kitchen. We've been busy trying to bring back coffee hour. We haven't had it for a year. What we plan on doing in the weeks to come, when the bishop's not here to have a Q&A, is we'll have tables with 3 chairs around them, round tables throughout. So you'll see we have plexiglass set up. So any food item or drink item will be behind that, and there'll be servers to get what you want. Okay, so if anyone wants any refreshment, feel free to go get it. But it is a joy to welcome the bishop to his home, to Grace Church. And I do want to say, I'm sure he'll have something to say about it, but I've already been asked about masks, and the diocesan task force, and the bishop and his minions. Sorry.
it. No, that's great. I'll take it.
And the offices, the diocesan offices, they are going to be issuing new guidelines to us. We should expect that this week. So we'll share that with everybody through the e-messenger as we get that, and any changes in our protocols will be there. So Bishop, welcome.
Thank you.
Please have a seat. I don't know if our deacon is still with us.
I don't know.
I don't think so. Okay. And Jenny, we have a seat for you. If you'd like, Jenny Bennett. Jenny Bennett, we have a seat up here for you. Come, join us.
Okay, thank
Sit
you.
next to the bishop, please.
Oh,
Bishop, the floor is yours.
thank you so very much. Woo. Is it me? Okay. Woo. Well, you see, like good Episcopalians, none of us are sitting near the front. Well, as I said, it is a joy to be with you all this morning as we gather, and I'm looking forward to this time that we get to just talk. I don't have an agenda. So my agenda is whatever questions or things that you would like to chat about and talk about. So the good thing is, if you don't have questions for me, I have a list of questions for you. So it's probably in your best interest to ask me lots of questions. Canon Whitney will also be joining me in kind of answering some of the questions. The really, really hard questions, I usually send off to Canon Whitney. So if you have any really, really difficult ones, let me know, and I will just, pass them on to her. I think we have a setup so that everybody can hear. So there's a microphone over there. So if there's a question that you would like to ask, just jump to the microphone, or you can put on your really big indoor church voice that we all can hear you. So, like I said, there's no agenda. I don't have any plans for this except to listen to and answer questions that you might have. So, what questions do you have out there that we can try to begin to answer? Huh? I love the way you phrased that. How long will God be on Zoom? Well, I think God has been Zooming for a very long time. One of the things that I think that this pandemic has taught us is that technology is a thing, right? How many of you have taken advantage of having church online, that you can be at home? See, so how many of you don't want that to go away? I suspect most of us. So what this time of pandemic has kind of taught us is that having live streaming, having that opportunity for us to be able to do things in a different way isn't necessarily going to go away anytime soon. So I suspect that even when we're back to whatever our next normal is going to look like, live streaming has to be a part of it. Zoom meetings are just a thing because I mean, we realize, like for instance, I can meet with the folks up in Kirksville, which is about 3.5 hours from here. I can instantly meet with them via Zoom and not have to do a 3-hour drive up and a 3-hour drive back. I can meet with you. We could do things that I can quickly jump on a Zoom and be able to be with you. Like this coming week, I have to go to New York for an event, but I will still be doing some of my meetings and some of my regular work via Zoom. So it really doesn't matter where I am. And so Zoom is going to continue to be a thing. Virtual is going to be a thing. I think what this pandemic has done in the 1.5 years that we've kind of been in it has accelerated what the church needed to do a long time ago. You know, although I'm anticipating at some point somebody's going to come walking into church with their bunny slippers and their pajamas because, you know, they're so accustomed to doing that on Sunday morning in front of their, you know, computer that I am waiting for it. Someone's going to walk in with like the fuzzy slippers, the pajamas with their coffee and kind of go, well, so where do I sit for this Zoom church? So, but it's going to continue to be a thing. So other questions or other things that are on your mind?
Good morning, Bishop. My name is Chris Kurth. I was wondering, Bishop, could you speak to the social covenant that you helped author or co-sign and Grace's role in it?
The anti-racism covenant? Oh, so there's a website for it. Anti-racism, anti-race. I think it's anti-racist anti-race. Woo. It's not me, I promise. Back almost a year ago, when George Floyd had died, and lots of folks took to the streets to protest and to recognize, in many ways, that racism had been a part of the system. I realized that we as the church are in a unique position to do something about this. You know, we know what reconciliation looks like, right? You know, we talk a lot about forgiveness and reconciliation. We know what healing looks like because we talk about it all the time. Antiracismcovenant.org. We know that Jesus, even on the cross, figured a way of forgiving those people who did him harm. So as a church, we have this long history and we know exactly what it means to be people of reconciliation. And so writing the covenant was a way of inviting us to take a hard and serious look at ourselves and the institution that is the church and ask, where are we able to make changes to better reflect God's reign? You know, we pray, your kingdom come, your will be done, practically every time we get together. So what does that look like? It looks like a system that is not favoring one over the other. It looks like a system where our language reflects the best of who we are. What I mean by that, many of us wouldn't think that systematic racism has made it into our prayer book, but it has in many ways. We just don't really think about it. Think, for instance, during the season of Advent. You know, Advent is always light and darkness. Well, it reemphasizes that light is always good and darkness is always bad. But we don't think of that as necessarily reinforcing norms that are part of society. You know, if we think of the scripture readings, you know, we know if you pick up and read God interacting with Moses or Elijah or Ezekiel, we know that God dwells in deep darkness, right? But we don't hear those passages as part of scripture on Sunday. Our lectionary conveniently leaves out the places where God dwells in darkness. You know, a couple months ago we had the story of Moses interacting with God up on the mountain. And then right after that, there is this beautiful passage where God is dwelling in deep darkness and Moses gets to interact in that. But that is not part of the lectionary text, even though it literally comes right after it. So there are places where we as the church, we have done kind of what I call the sin of omission, where we've omitted the places that say darkness is equal to light. You know, there's a great passage that, darkness to you, O Lord, is not dark. And Pacific Islander folks. It acknowledges where we have been with Native Americans and acknowledges how we've devalued women. I mean, it acknowledges all the things that we say that we hold to be dear, and then it gives us some opportunities of things that we can do. Because the thing is, we know what to do with the big splashy things of racism. When somebody gets killed, we can protest and we can issue statements. But it's the everyday micro racism-ish acts that are the ones that are most damaging. I can wear this purple thing as much as I want to. When I walk into most stores, I am still a black man living in this country. And that comes with its own, with its own set of trials. If I've told a story where Jalon, who's somewhere, he's probably found the playroom or somebody to play with. He one night had a fever of about 103. And if you ever have a child around, his age, well, he was about 6.5, 7. And I just had to take him to the emergency room. I did all the stuff that a parent does. You dunk them in a shower that's like freezing cold to bring it down, and Tylenol, nothing worked. So I had to go take him to the emergency room. And on the way back from the emergency room, I had to go pick up a prescription for him. Mind you, this is at night, on a Saturday night before, I have to go up in the morning and do church. So I'm in a rush. And he's just out of the emergency room. He has to get this prescription to kind of keep him where he is. And I am speeding. I admit that I am speeding. And a police officer, happens to pull me over as I'm trying to just get to the pharmacy. And the first question he asked was, "What are you doing here?" Not, "Can I see your license and registration?" Not, "Did you know that you were speeding?" The first thing he said to me was, "What are you doing here?" Now, mind you, the town that we lived in before moving here did not have a lot of people that looked like me. I'll just put it that way. So his first question wasn't, "Do you know you're speeding? Do you realize that there's 35 and you're going about 50? It was, "What are you doing here?" And so my response was, "I live here." And I showed him my driver's license and all that stuff. And then the question was, "Well, why are you speeding?" I said, "Well, my son and I just got out of the emergency room, and thankfully all the paperwork was sitting on my front seat. So it's handy that I could say, we just got out of the emergency room. I'm trying to get him his prescription so that I can get him home to bed." And his whole demeanor changed in that instance. "Oh, I've been there. I know what it feels like for my kid to be sick and whatnot." And, he eventually just let me go and kind of gave us a partial escort home. But just that interaction, for me, is a reminder that we have a long way to go when it comes to when it comes to race relations. Part of what I think is the problem is we don't talk about this stuff. I have to have a talk with that 9-year-old in about a year or two about what it means to be a young black kid in this country. I have to have a conversation with him. I have to have the talk. And the talk is nothing to do with the birds and the bees. It's to talk about, what do you do if you have an interaction with the police? What do you do if you're at a party and you're not supposed to be there and everybody starts running, that you can't run? You have to stay right where you are and make sure your hands are visible. I have to tell him that when he gets pulled over, that his hands have to be on the steering wheel, and everything he has to do, he has to say that he has to do it. So it's sad that we still have to be in a place like that, but I think part of getting out of a place like that is being able to share those stories and to be able to say, we as a society need to be able to do better. So the covenant is in a way of beginning that conversation, beginning that process of saying, we need to and can be better than what we have been, and that it does not have to be this way. I mean, mind you, I said, I admitted that I was speeding. I know I was speeding. I should have gotten a ticket. The first question should not have been, what are you doing here? So, does that kind of answer some of your question?
Thank you. it does. I only would want to know what Grace's role would be. Is there a place for us to sign or?
Yep. So if you go to the website, antiracismcovenant.org, there is a place that you can sign on to that as an individual. We've had some dioceses who've signed on to it. We've had congregations who have said that they're going to take this on because the actual covenant piece calls us to do some things, to pay attention, to make sure that we can find ways that we can deal with and speak about, like having the conversation. There's this wonderful piece called Sacred Ground, which is that comes out of the Episcopal Church. And then there's also Fierce Conversations. So I encourage you to kind of take up some of those resources and just have the conversation. The best way that we can begin to make some change in the system is by having advocates. You advocating for me and my son and the rest of my family or the other folks that are people of color is the best advocate, because I am easily dismissed as just an angry black man or something like that. But having allies that can say, this is how things are, this is how we're seeing it, is a much more, it's much more likely that things will change when enough people stand up and say, this does not have to be like this. So, thank you for the question. Oh. Other easy questions. Sure. I will just point to Whitney. Okay, so I'm going to say something, and then I'm going to point. I'm going to just hand it. This is all Whitney. I will be Vanna White today. What's happening across mainline denominations, I think, in many ways, is that we put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. That's a short answer. What I mean by that is, in many ways, what we've done is we've begun to focus too much on ourselves and not focus on the community around us. When we look to Jesus, and you will hear me, I will always be talking about Jesus. Just get accustomed to it. That's just how it's going to be. When we looked at what Jesus did by way of ministry, Jesus did not sit in the temple and wait for people to come to him. What he did is he went around and he walked around and he interacted with people. He went and found people where they were, and he walked beside them for a moment. So one of the pieces that is always close to my heart is Jesus walking with his disciples on the road to Emmaus. You remember that story? They're headed to Emmaus on the evening of the resurrection, and they're all commiserating, like, Jesus died. They're all sad. And he comes next to them. He doesn't go ahead of them. He doesn't go behind them. He walks next to them, and he opens the scriptures to them, and he comforts them for a time. And then he goes ahead, and then they kind of go, oh, our hearts were like strangely burning when we were talking to him, and he kind of knew what was going on. This is kind of interesting. Maybe you should go tell somebody about this. And so for us, I think, and for most mainline denominations, we've looked inward for a long time. And what this time calls us to do is to look outward. And we as Episcopalians, we love evangelism. That's the E word that you don't say in the Episcopal Church. That's why I hired a canon for evangelism and discipleship development. Because we have to be able to go out and tell our stories. We have to go out there and be able to walk alongside our neighbors, whoever they may be. And so before I start getting out of my lane, I'm going to move this over to Canon Whitney.
Thank you so much, Bishop. Thank you all. It is such I call it spiritual violence, and we don't want to be any part of that. And we have a complicated legacy with that as part of the Anglican communion, right? Throughout history, evangelism at its heart is simply about searching for good news and being yourself. Just to be honest, this all the time, and I say this with them. It's not your job to grow a great church. It's not your job to get more beer into the pew and more money in the pew. Your job is to discover, receive, and name the good news of Christ everywhere you are. I promise you, if you are simply searching out and making yourself ready for good news, your church probably isn't doing it. So God is the one who does all the work. We just search for what God is already doing in our community. We are going to join what God is doing in this neighborhood, in this town, and take part in it. And that is a rich, exciting thing. That feels like a little scary, because that's what I talk to people. Ooh. But guess what? You don't have to do it by yourself. The Spirit is doing it together. Right? Evangelism should be taking part inside the congregation as well. We got to dive deeper together and talk about something exciting and learn more about that, right? We got to practice talking about what Jesus is doing in our lives with one another. And that's our training week, is doing it together. So I want to say one more thing, and then I'll get off my soapbox. I don't talk all the time, but my favorite evangelism practice is this. It's something you can do this week. So, what are the first words out of all the evangelists, all the angels in the Bible? What do they say? Do not be afraid. The most basic reality of evangelism is reducing fear. The practice, the spiritual discipline of reducing fear. What would your life be like? What would the people in your office, your family, your grandchildren, your friends, whoever you see on the golf course, what if you went into all of those encounters this week searching for ways to reduce fear in yourself and in others? If you do that, you are an evangelist.
You see why I hired her. But I will add a little bit to what Whitney said, because I say it all the time. There's good news and there's bad news. The good news is it's not your job to grow this church. You can't do it. Good luck. Let me know how it works. The bad news is you have to be faithful to the stories of our faith. That's the part that most of the time we have a little bit of a challenge with. And the good thing is we don't do this alone. Um, I'm always saying, especially with Whitney talking about fear, our world is filled with fear. We know people out there who are very fearful, don't we? Who are afraid of losing their job, afraid for their health. I mean, there's a lot of fear. And what do we in the church say? In Jesus Christ, perfect love casts out fear. So we are called to be people of love. We're called to be people who are faithful. And we're called to share our stories. That time when you lost a loved one and the church members fed you more food than you could eat in a week. That time when you had a hard time in life and somebody showed up for you. Those are the stories that you share. That is evangelism at its basic. It is just telling your good news and inviting other people into that good news. Did you know your average Episcopalian invites someone to church once every 26 years? Once every 26 years. I am declaring that this is the 26th year. Invite someone. The number one reason people come to church or get involved is somebody invited them. I suspect if we poll this room, someone invited you. Whether it was, and we don't think of our family members as inviting. No, we probably should. But we don't think of like your mom taking you or like me bringing my son as an invitation. But that's an invitation. Inviting someone to say, come, I have some good news. I have something that I want you to be a part of is evangelism at its basic. So this is the 26th year, folks. Start inviting. Other questions? Oh, by all means. Would you mind saying your name just this way? Susan, okay? Okay. Okay, how I ended up here. Blame them. um, so I was born and raised in Barbados. So I'm originally from Barbados. If you're familiar with the Caribbean archipelago, huh? Oh, well, you know it well then. So the Caribbean islands form this big archipelago, so it's like a big sea. So all the islands come along like this. South America's down here. Florida is kind of by the little chandelier. Um, so they arc around here, and so Barbados is the only one that sticks out of the archipelago. So I was born and raised in Barbados. And I moved from Barbados when I was 14 to New York. So I went to high school in New York. I went to college in Cleveland, Ohio at Case Western Reserve. And then went back to New York for seminary at General Seminary, where I'm headed tomorrow. And then back to Ohio, where my first parish was. And then from there, I went to Michigan, and I was director of St. Paul's up until about a year and a half ago. November 23rd, a day that will remain in infamy. The diocese elected me. I was completely shocked. They elected me to be the bishop November 23rd, and then I've been bishop since June 13th. So coming up next month will be a year. Oh dear Lord, how did it go by so quickly? So that's kind of the quick and short version. Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Other questions? Oh, I see one of our seminarians hiding out back there. Mm-hmm. Oh, do you mind sharing your name? I'm sorry? Okay. Mm-hmm. We are already beginning to have those conversations. Like I said earlier, we're realizing that this hybrid virtual world thing is a thing. I mean, there's something about being in a room with people, but we realize that there are going to be some folks who, coming together is a bit of a hassle. If you're coming to St. Louis from Kirksville or Poplar Bluff, that's a long haul. Mhm. Yeah. So that part, yeah, that part will not go away. The streaming of convention is just going to be a thing. Like I said, kind of like streaming is going to be a thing at Grace. Streaming is just going to be a thing for convention. That's just what we're going to have to do. But we have to figure out what canonically we can do with people and delegates and all of that stuff. So the making of all that we have to figure it out, but the streaming of it is just going to happen. So sure. In some ways, yes. It did reduce our carbon footprint because people weren't driving and staying in hotels and all that stuff. But you also had to pay for the additional technology and all of that stuff. So it doesn't quite balance out to be equal, but I think we've already put into the budget the extra cost it's going to take for the software and all that stuff that we're going to be using. Yes. So, I mean, convention, I think this year is going to be in St. Charles, I think, if I remember correctly. Yep, it's going to be in St. Charles this year from a hotel or something. I just show up and, run the thing. But no, I mean, we're all part of the planning of it. But it's in St. Charles this year. And like I said, it's going to have a hybrid portion of it. So thank you. Other questions?
Chris Kurth again. And is there a place for a deacon serving here at Grace Church?
If you can find me one, I will gladly send you one. I am always on the lookout. I mean, part of the reason why I take a deacon with me on a visitation is we're trying to get more deacons in this diocese. I think right now we have 15 active deacons. I would love to have a deacon in every church. So if anyone has that call to servant ministry, to servanthood, that God has been tugging at your life or kind of giving you signals that, this might be something that I might be thinking about, talk to these two folks to let them know that you are interested in perhaps pursuing the diaconate. Um, there's a shift in diocesan policy where I am perfectly fine if a deacon is raised up out of grace with that deacon serving at grace. So again, if you have folks here that that have those gifts, you may not think you have them. If the community sees them and recognizes them in you, please talk to your clergy. I would love to be ordaining deacons left and right. So yes, thank you. Great question. Other things that are on your mind. I'm surprised nobody's asked me about regathering. That's usually the first question that I get. Yep. So probably this week or early next week, there's going to be a new set of guidelines issued from the diocese on how we regather and all that stuff. We know that vaccination rates are going up and that more and more people are vaccinated, et cetera. And so we're going to begin to loosen some of the restrictions that have been in place over these last 14, 15 months. Some of it is around masking, whether you need to or not. The CDC just sent out new guidelines that if you are fully vaccinated, you can be in a room with other people who are fully vaccinated without a mask and without being 6 feet apart and all that stuff. So the Diocesan Pandemic Task Force is looking at all of that and figuring out how we need to respond. The hard part is the CDC is federal. Each state and each county has their own set of guidelines. And so we have to kind of begin to balance those two. But we do recognize that, again, if everybody in a room is vaccinated, fully vaccinated, which is the 2 weeks past your second shot, if everybody in the room, you're back to normal. The question I always get is, when can we sing? Well, when everybody sitting inside church is fully vaccinated, you can sing to your heart's content. So I encourage you, if you have neighbors, if you have friends, if you have members of the congregation that have not been vaccinated, I encourage you to invite them to please go get vaccinated. The best way that we get past this pandemic and we can go back to what our next normal looks like is by everybody being vaccinated. And, they're free. It's kind of like they're trying to give them away now. But that's the goal that we're looking towards. To a day when everybody is vaccinated, or I think 70% is the ultimate goal. When at least 70% of the population is fully vaccinated, we'll be able to go back to something that looks like normal. The reason why we can sit a little bit closer to each other is because we are all vaccinated. And I mean, the same thing is true for you. The more folks that are vaccinated, the quicker we get, the quicker we get out of this stuff. So thank you. Other questions? Wow, I've been clear and concise. So I have some questions for you, if you have no more questions for me. So I think Father Todd and Mother Ginny sent out the questions to you before, but a couple of the questions that I've been asking congregations, what are some of the things that are working well for you? What do you want more of? I've also been asking, kind of in line with what Canon Whitney was talking about, what are some of the things that you may need to let go of in order for something new to happen and grow here? Because, like I said, we always talk about church growth. We always talk about we want more people, we want young families. That's usually the big one. But what does it mean to actually have young families show up? What does it mean for us to actually grow? You'll hear this spiel a lot because it's me all the time. But, we do a really good job of welcome. We got to work on hospitality. What I mean by that, welcome, better yet, name a church that says that they're unwelcoming. Just one, anyone. You can't, right? Even the most unwelcoming church will say to you, we welcome everyone. Do they not? I suspect some of you have been to some church services in other congregations or other dioceses or other denominations, and it was the most unwelcoming place you've ever been in. Yes? No? Anybody? But I guarantee you, if you looked at their bulletin, the bulletin says, we are a welcoming, diverse community of faith. Yeah, right. So we know what welcome looks like. Welcome is say, open the door and come on in. We might want to change you. We might want you to look, act, or be different, but you're welcome to come on in. Hospitality, on the other hand, says, I'm going to invite you in, and no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what you are going to come into our community, and together we are going to be changed. That's what hospitality is about. A perfect example of that is, how do we welcome young families into our spaces? You know, what I've found is, if we can be hospitable to the smallest among us or the youngest among us, it means that we're hospitable to our senior saints as well. The example that I give is, when I was in the parish, when I first got there, the vestry and I walked around the building on our knees. We weren't praying. What I wanted them to see was, what does a child see when they're walking around this building? You know? Because if you are this tall on Sunday mornings and you stand up in church, your understanding of church on Sunday morning are a bunch of people's butts. Tell me I'm wrong. If you're about 4 or 5 years old and you look up, what are you staring at? There's a sermon in there somewhere that I'm not preaching this morning. But, you know, they're seeing a bunch of people's butts. What does it look like for us to be completely hospitable to those young little, those small Episcopalians in the making? For the parish that I was serving, it meant we had to give up space to make sure kids felt welcomed in the worship space. I didn't want them to be seeing a bunch of butts. So we took out the first 3 pews on the front, put a big rug on the floor that kids were welcome. We added some rocking chairs for moms and dads with small kids that they could, you know, rock their little one if they needed to. And it made a difference, because what kids were seeing now was what was happening at the altar. They could see the readers. They could see the priest. They could see what was happening. Then I invited them to come and stand with me around the altar. And the first couple of times, it was complete chaos, because they didn't know what, I mean, they're going, ooh, shiny cup and plates and candle. I mean, like, kind of like sensory overload for a small kid. Until we figured a way for them to be incorporated into it. So I would teach them, you know, this is orans, it's the way that we pray. So when we were praying, they all stood next to me and went, so I went, okay, well, we're going to do this. I mean, my son is the first one that'll be standing there kind of going, when I say the Lord be with you, he's ready. But we just taught them little cues and whatnot. And again, after a while, they got it. They recognized that something special was happening here. And their parents felt much more comfortable because they felt comfortable. And you know, if you have kids, if your kids are comfortable someplace, you're comfortable someplace. So how do we offer hospitality to some folks that are already in our space? Here was the fun thing that we learned about rocking chairs in church. When we put those rocking chairs in, we thought they were going to be for the young moms and dads with babies. Every Sunday, our senior saints were in those rocking chairs. They would argue about who got to sit in the rocking chair. And I was mad, because I'm like, wait, those aren't for you. Those are for young families. But then, you know what? The Holy Spirit, she has a really good way of doing her thing. What ended up happening is the parents with young babies started handing them to the senior saints sitting in the pew, in their thing. Well, guess what? You've just created a relationship. Those little babies had so many random grandparents on a Sunday morning. And the relationships between some of our senior saints and young families, you know, that the young families, their parents are off somewhere, and the senior saints, their kids and grandkids are off somewhere, and so here's a relationship that was formed. All of it, we just stumbled into it, but it began by asking a question. how can we be hospitable to the smallest people around us? How can we be hospitable to our senior saints? So my challenge to you and to every congregation in our diocese is, in that what do we need to let go? Look at it from an angle of hospitality. If I'm having a program, if I'm inviting people, what do families need? What do little kids need? What do seniors need? Once a month we used to put on a dinner so that moms and dads could go have a date night. All of our senior saints would come and cook, and they would run around and play with the kids and all this stuff, and mom and dad could go have a 2 or 3 hour date night because they just needed a break. God knows we need a break. If you run around behind a 9-year-old most of the time, you need a break. Thank God my mother lives with us. It's like, here, take your grandchild. Goodbye. But, my point is, and I'm not saying you need to go replicate all of this stuff, but look at whatever you do through that lens of hospitality. We're inviting Christ into our presence. What does that look like, and how do we make that differently?
My one concern, I have 2 large churches within a mile of my house. One is used to be the largest Lutheran church in the Missouri Synod. It is now called Pathfinders. They pulled out of the association, out of their diocese. The other church was the Baptist church. They were active in the community. 4 years ago, they had a Easter egg hunt where they dropped 10,000 plastic eggs out of a helicopter, had 12,000 people showing up for that.
That sounds dangerous.
It is now a car wash. For $2 million, they sold the property and merged with a tiny little church out in Eureka. We're sitting on beautiful property that we could probably sell at a good price. I see the Lutherans going down. I see the Baptists going down. I see the Methodists going down. I see us going down. What is our game plan to do the evangelism that you're talking about? Do we have a plan?
We do. Or we will. Thank you. You kind of did a perfect setup. One of the things that we are doing as a diocese right now that has started since January is strategic visioning. I'm a firm believer in what Isaiah said, where there is no vision, the people perish. We don't, as the whole church, we are just now thinking about a plan for what does it look like to be everyday evangelists that Canon Whitney's talking about. And so as a diocese, one of the things that we're doing is strategic visioning. Who do we want to be in 5 years? Who do we want to be in 10 years? Who do we want to be in 15 years? What do we want to leave for the next generation? That strategic visioning is asking you, and you'll see some of it, I think I saw some of it in your e-news already, of questions and surveys and stuff like that that you can respond to. But what it is crafting a vision for how we're going to get from here to there. And one of the joys is Dick Entenman, your very own, is one of the co-chairs of that strategic visioning. So Dick, would you like to say a little bit about strategic visioning? You might have to borrow the microphone over there. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I was really excited when I got an email from the bishop saying, would you be willing to work on this team with the rest of the folks? There's about 10 of us on this team. We're from throughout the diocese. Our goal is to present a proposed strategic plan to the diocesan council, hopefully by this coming convention. We've taken our team of 10, divided into 5 focus areas, evangelism being one of them. And we've invited other folks to come and join us to give their viewpoint and their opinion on this process. So now there's about 50 of us working on this. Two more parishioners here, Debbie Pigeon and Diane Casey, are part of that group. So we appreciate their effort on this as well. If you haven't done so, I urge you to take a look at the proposed vision and mission statements. We worked about 2 months developing a proposal. It's out there on the website. We'd like your feedback on what it means to you so we can go move forward with the vision and mission. I'm excited. It's the first time we're asking folks' opinions about what they want their diocese to look like. 5 years, 3 years, 1 year from now, it's going to take some resources in my mind. So we're going to make some selling points to the standing committee as well. So it's all of us working together to get where we want to be. We're broaching subjects we haven't broached before, and it's fun and exciting. So thank you, Bishop, for bringing us together.
You're welcome.
I have one more question for you, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's a soft question.
Since you have the mic.
A soft question. What have we surprised you about since you've been here?
Oh, at Grace or just the diocese as a whole?
At the diocese in general, besides the weather.
Oh, yeah, well, I will start with the weather first. Thank you for this wonderful weather that you all have here, well, I guess we have here in Missouri. Having lived 14 years in Michigan, where that bright glowing orb in the sky is a thing that we don't see very often, it has been great to just have like April or May where it's like above freezing. It's like, wow, this is a new thing. But I will say, I have been tremendously proud of the level of innovation and creativity that's happening in this diocese. I cannot tell you how very proud I am and how often I get to brag about being the bishop of the Diocese of Missouri. Because I get to brag to my other fellow bishops like, oh, well, we're doing this, this, and this. And they just kind of look at me like, oh, shut up. But, you know, the clergy have been innovative. Our lay folks have been innovative. I mean, one of the things, and you'll see this in a couple of weeks, one of the things is that we have done more ministry during this pandemic, I think, than at any other period before. Think about what that means. In the middle of a crisis, we as faithful Episcopalians, as faithful followers of Jesus, have figured out ways of just being who we are called to be. I was just at St. Barnabas up in Florissant. St. Barnabas, St. Stephen's in Ferguson, and All Saints in Ascension in St. Barnabas is in Florissant. Northwood is where All Saints in Ascension are. See, I'm learning where everybody is, so bear with me. I'll get it one of these days. Those three congregations, in the middle of a pandemic, got together to build community gardens that they're going to feed, that the produce is going to go to a local food bank to do fresh food. Trinity St. Charles is doing stuff like that. I mean, people have just found ways to be innovative. Trinity Central West End, they've always had like a feeding program. They managed to get they're feeding more people now during the pandemic in more creative ways than ever before. So like across this diocese, from like Kirksville, where they're doing all kinds of really creative stuff with the young people at Truman State University, even down to Poplar Bluff, where they're like positioning themselves to really impact their local community. There's such innovation, and I think there's so much pent-up creative energy in our diocese. So, you know, if there's something that you want to do, if there's something that you've just been burning to do, you know, come talk to your clergy. I mean, have them come talk to me. I mean, I said that my job as the bishop is to try to find ways to say yes. Because I know we have to try things. Part of the problem, I think, for us as part of the Episcopal Church or mainline denomination, like why your Lutheran and Baptist neighbors closed, is that we are afraid of trying. We are afraid that, you know, if we do it and we fail, that it's going to be this bad thing. But I think we learn so much more from failing than when we succeed. You know, you try it, you fail spectacularly, and you just try again. Something else will work. But, you know, that's what Jesus did. I mean, Jesus got it wrong occasionally. Read the Gospels, you know. Every once in a while, he messed up too. You know, that lady that came up to him and said, can you heal my daughter? And he said, no, we don't give the scraps, you know, we don't give the food to the dogs underneath the table. No, that was Jesus messing up. That was a big failure. He missed an opportunity. But she said, and God bless her mouth, she said to him, but even the dogs under the table eat the crumbs. That was his mom in his head going, Psh, I raised you better than that. But he heard it, and then he finally said, oh, great is your faith. Your daughter is healed. So, even Jesus messed up every once in a while. And so we don't have to be afraid of failure. I think most of the time we put so much pressure on ourselves. It's like, we're trying this new program and it has to bring in like 50 people. And it's like, if it doesn't, it doesn't. We tried, it didn't work. Let's find something else to try. And this is right up Whitney's alley, so.
Thank you, Bishop. If I could add just a quick word. I love this. You had a question about what's the plan for evangelism? Somebody had a question?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. So a couple things, a couple of resources I can bring to you so we can get down to some real brass tacks are community. Have you ever been part of a ministry where we all sat inside the church and thought up this great ministry and then built it and then no one came and we didn't know why? Sometimes we're not as attentive as we could be to building our partnerships outside the congregation, joining what God is already doing. So I have a whole workshop that we can go through together with community listening strategies and skills, get us better integrated in that neighborhood around so that the ministries that you're already doing can flourish even more. Because you don't have to do the heavy lifting by yourself. We build these ministries with our community. So that's the community listening part. Another part on evangelism, another thing that I do, part of my role in this diocese, is I work with individual congregations to build an individual congregational evangelism plan. Not every congregation evangelizes in the same way. I'm a big, big believer in evangelism out of our spiritual gifts. So some people think they might not be a good evangelist because they're an introvert. I'm an introvert. I feel your pain, right? But I have many skills and resources to share with you about how you can minister as an evangelist out of your specific type of gift, as an individual and as a congregation. Every congregation has a charism, has a spiritual gift, right? So for some congregations, it's feeding people. For some, it's clothing the naked. For some, it's education. For some, it's work with youth. For some, it's social justice work, protests, things of that nature. So crafting your evangelism out of your gift is it's super fun. Okay, super fun to do, and B, it can make you more comfortable and confident as evangelists, so that you see this ministry that's already a part of you, what you're already doing, starts to flourish in new and really exciting ways. So if that's a conversation that you're interested in, community listening, evangelism out of Grace Episcopal Church's gifts, like I will get up so early in the morning to come talk with you about that because it's my jam. So
Thank you. Any final thoughts or final questions? Well, I will. Ryan, was that your?
Good morning, Bishop.
Good
Hi,
morning.
everyone. I just wanted to say, just to tag on to what Canon Whitney was just saying, we talked about some wonderful things, evangelism and spiritual gifts. And as I was fortunate enough to preach my first sermon here a few weeks ago, I talked about one of the spiritual gifts of this place that I have felt in my heart is the gift of hospitality. When I first came here, it was those people who were bold and brave that came up to me and said, I feel like Jesus is calling you in this direction, and I'm willing to walk with you, and I'm willing to listen to you, and I'm willing to stand and sit and to cry and laugh with you. And this is grace. I truly believe that in my heart, that the spiritual gift that comes to mind first and foremost in this place is hospitality. And one of the other things that's been on my heart as I reflected on the questions is that one of the other ways I've felt the Spirit moving through this challenging time of COVID-19 has been in our gift of hospitality. Because even halfway across the country on Zoom, as I've joined you, and as we've called each other on the phone, and as we've written to one another, one of the ways I've noticed the Spirit moving is that we're more honest with each other, not only about those high moments in life, but really about the moments that are challenging. Those moments where it's not just the Sermon on the Mount, it's not just the Transfiguration, but sometimes it is the garden. And so I felt that spirit of hospitality moving amongst us. And I pray that that's one of the things that we might learn from this time of pandemic and that we might keep with one another is that it's not just those moments of coming to church and feeling like we have to be on our A game the whole time. But it's those moments too where we can say to the community, we are Grace Church, and you're not only welcome, but you're welcome to cry with us. And you're welcome to just be still. And I'm willing to listen. And this is who I believe we are. So I just want to end with that and just say that to you, how much I love and care for you all, and just say that I believe the Spirit is moving us and guiding us in this direction. And so, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. The bishop is going to New York because he's going to be receiving a degree, a Doctor of Divinity from General Theological Seminary, where he went to seminary. And so we congratulate you, Bishop. Godspeed and safe travels. And isn't it exciting? These are just two of the people in the diocese, but isn't it exciting? Canon Whitney always excites me when she speaks. She's a great, just a wonderful go-getter. And Bishop, we just feel so fortunate to have you as our bishop. He was very... Dick Entenman was also on the search committee for the new bishop, and we had some wonderful candidates, but rarely does it ever happen. But on the first ballot, Deon was elected to be our bishop. So we know the Holy Spirit has brought you to us, and we are so thankful. And come back to your home at Grace anytime. Stop in. You're just down the street. You're just that way down the street. Yes. So, any last words, Bishop?
Yes, so again, thank you all so very much for your gracious hospitality, for welcoming us and the small person, the small human that I'm raising around here somewhere. Thank you all so very much for the wonderful hospitality. The last thing that I will leave with you is be good news. Go let your life be the good news that somebody needs to hear today. Do that every day. When you leave here, there you go. Proclaim the good news. I keep saying, when you walk out this door, you should look like and smell like and feel like good news. Because somebody needs some good news out there in this world today. And the only good news that they might hear today is you. The only gospel that they may ever read is you. The only Jesus that they may ever encounter is you. Be good news. So thank you, Grace, for us being here this morning. Thank you. Thank you.